But not much has changed in how to deal with issues when it comes up with putting bees and people together in the same place. And there's two rules to keep in mind. And the first rule is that there is always somebody in the city council who takes this heart attack serious. And that's the person you have to deal with the most, probably. And the other rule is there's always a person on the city council who takes this heart attack serious. And that's the person you're going to have to deal with. So all of these things are aimed at dealing with the people who don't want you to be there, or who don't want bees in the city, or who don't want this to happen on their watch. So if you've got that person, these are the things that you're going to have to convince them to change. You're going to have to deal with to convince them to change their mind. If you don't have that person on your city council or county board or wherever it is, you're probably not in this room because you're not having any problems. And therein lies kind of the differences of what's going on between people. So, a dozen points of urban light. And if you've got to deal with neighbors, if you've got to deal with a neighborhood association, if you've got to deal with a city council, a county board, whatever group you're dealing with that says no when you say we want to, or whatever group you're saying is, well, tell us how it's going to work so that we know what to expect. These are some of the things that I found out. Every one of these points, I've dealt with city council or some group of people over the years where this was an issue. So I'm not making these up. These are things that have caused roadblocks for people who want to have bees where there's lots of people. And you can define urban any way you want. You can define it in downtown New York City, or you can define it in suburban Detroit, or rural, almost rural Cleveland. Urban is defined by the people who live there, not by anything that I can do, because if you've got bees and people in the same place, whether it's one person neighbor that doesn't like bees, or whether it's a skyscraper full of bees and you want them on the balcony, you still run into a lot of the same issues. So you want to go through all of these points and take a look at ways to deal with them when they come up to be controversial, or when you get that stubborn no, it ain't going to happen. The first one is be legal, and the second one is do you know the rules? Are you prepared? You can read the points here. We're going to go through them one by one. But these are, if you want a dozen points of things to think about and to start dealing with the benefits of bees in the city. The first thing you need to make aware of people, if you're trying to convince somebody that bees are good, are all of these benefits. Improved pollination opportunity for first-hand pollination. You know what? People who live in the city don't give a rat's butt about pollination. Now, they've heard a lot about we need food, but that was odd. This is an argument that doesn't carry a whole lot of weight with someone who's afraid of bees, or someone that thinks that their child is going to get stung to death. Pollination, they don't care. You can bring it up and you can convince them that, yes, you're going to have more food in your garden, but you don't have a garden. Okay? You're going to have better, and your argument starts to get real weak real fast. So pollination certainly is an attribute that you want to think about, but when it comes to when it comes to people trying to convince people of the value of bees in an urban setting, pollination is usually not at the top of their list. Often it's not even on their list. So my advice is probably don't start there. Increased biodiversity may be a point, but do they care how many bugs are in the park? Probably not. Not when they're dealing with, I want to protect my kid from being stung by bees. So when you start trying to convince people of the things that bees are beneficial, then you take a look at the other side of that equation and concerns the bees in the city, and what is at the top of the list? It's always stings. And that's often the end of the discussion. People can't get past that, or don't want to get past that. They had one event when they were 10, and that scarred them for life, and convincing them otherwise is often a problem. Allergies, 3.3% of the U.S. population is allergic to bee venom. That's yellow jacket, bumblebee, honeybee, you name it. 3.3%. That's a fact that you can use. When you look at this room, there's, what, 50 people in here? So Some number of you are maybe allergic, probably none of you. But some, you know, you can say when you're looking at a room full of 100 people, that only 3% are truly allergic. What percent of those people ever get stung? Then the percentage begins to drop down even lower. So the probability of an incident becomes very, very minute. Flight paths, if you're in, we'll look at this in a minute, but if you've got bees on a lawn in a city and they're flying out and going across the sidewalk, you're going to have an issue. And people don't want to deal with that. And you can deal with that. Fecal staining, we have bees on when I first started working at the root company, we had a lot of bees there, and they lasted, I don't know, 7 or 8 years, and then they did a whole bunch of construction. And where the bees were, they put a factory, so the bees went away. Well, we've reintroduced them. And their flight path goes right over my boss's car. And it took him about 8 or 9 weeks to figure out he said, "Are your bees doing this?" "Yes, they are." "Move your car." He did. But fecal staining is an issue, and it can, you know, this stuff can take the paint off cars, so it can be a problem for you. Animals, you know, dogs that are chained up or other animals that are confined, and bees together can be an issue. Water, and swarming. And I'll add one more because you're going to hear it 20 times. Swarming is an issue because it scares the heck out of people. It stops traffic, it closes streets, it gets on the 6 o'clock news.
Yes.
That's why it's an issue. The third time the mayor's wife has to close her store because a swarm landed on her front door, somebody's going to come and visit you. Whether they're your bees or not, it doesn't make any difference. But the one of them you're going to hear again and again and again is insurance. And if you've got bees, no matter where you are, do you have an insurance policy that says no matter what happens, you're covered? Doesn't make any difference whether it was kids at night, whether it was, no matter what happens, are you covered? And that's what you're going to want to look at. Way too often we ask our insurance agent, "I've got bees," and then they run screaming from the room. And that's not the guy you want. You want somebody that goes, "Okay, and that's the guy that you want." So be legal. Is it legal to keep bees? Do you know? And when I'm dealing with people who are first starting out on this road, do you know if it's legal to keep bees? And they say, well, it's always two things. One is if I ask, they're going to ask me why. So I don't want to open up that Pandora's box. And then the second question is, who do you ask? And often that's the point, because a lot of times when this question has never come up in any kind of formal sense, nobody in the city knows because it's never been acted on, or it's never been acted on in the life of the people that are currently in office. What are the rules? If it is legal, what are the rules? And can you have one hive on a city lot, or is there not a rule that says how many rules? So find out what the rules are. Know what you're dealing with before you have to do it and again, does your insurance cover this? No matter what, does your insurance cover this? So what are the rules? And that's what you have to find out. In Ohio, registration is required. I have to register with the State Department of Agriculture, so I register. That's the rule. Keep excellent record. I can't tell you the value of excellent records, not for today and not for managing your bees, but down the road if there's an incident and somebody comes and says, "In June, did you?" And you can say, "Nope, I didn't. I wasn't." You know, you've got a record that says what's going on. That's not proof positive, but it goes a long way in convincing the people that are in control of the situation. One, you know what you're doing, and two, you're responsible enough to record it, and three, there's some information that can help us decide what did happen probably. Regulations and zoning, and by those I mean if you live in a housing development, wrong term. If you live in the big fancy houses with the gated communities, they reside within the boundaries of a community that may allow bees, and they may not. And do you know what those rules and regulations are? And make sure you have insurance. Do I need to say that one more time? Make sure that you have insurance. If you're just starting out and it is legal, or you're not sure if it's legal, take a beginner's class. And then make a record of it and be able to show that, yes, I took a beginner's class. I have some experience, and there are people that vouch for me that I sat through those 12 hours and actually learn what I need to be doing. Local associations, state and regional groups like this one. The more that you belong to, the more exposure you're going to have to things that can go wrong, and at the same time you're going to be able to provide information for the people that you're trying to convince to make some change. So if you can walk into a meeting and say at the California State Beekeepers Association meeting, there was a discussion on this subject, this was the information that was presented, and this is the information I'm giving you so that you can act on it appropriately. So the more the information that you have, the better prepared you're going to be, and the more information you need, you're going to get at meetings like this. Neighbors and family too. Does your family care whether you have bees? Have you asked them? And that's always the question. Is you've always, you've always, and then suddenly your wife says, "Are you nuts?" Or your kids say, "No, I can't." I go, and you got to ask them. And I recently ran into a community in Ohio that enacted a law that said, yes, you can keep bees in it for the first time ever. And part of the regulation was, if your neighbor signs off on it, it's okay. And you can see the value of that law. It has no value at all. It's worthless, because what if that neighbor moves and a new neighbor moves in? So you are at the mercy of anybody that happens to move in there. So we're working to get that law changed. It doesn't depend on your neighbor. It depends on you following a set of guidelines, rules, and regulations, rather than, does somebody who likes them today or doesn't like them tomorrow change your mind. Again, we talked about allergies. There's going to be uncommon fear of insects, and that just goes without saying that on the bell curve of people, there's a part of that bell curve that says, anything bugs and I'm out of here. And you're going to have to deal with those. We mentioned pets. If you've got a dog that's chained, that can be a problem sometimes, or may be a problem. Free honey, you've heard this a million times. Always grease the wheels with free honey, and I can't argue with that. It's never done me any good, because all of the people that I live around love my bees and love the fact that I take care of them and they don't have to, and the free honey is just a bonus, so they're happy. But if you've got people that are a little edge and suddenly you walk up with a couple pound jars of honey 2 or 3 times a year, it's going to at least give them an opportunity to talk to you about what's going on. Be a good neighbor. It goes without saying, so let's say it anyway. Be a good neighbor, and you can see from the diagram where the bees are, there's water there. We're going to talk a lot more about water, but there's water there. There is a hedge between you and the neighbor. There is a fence around the bees, so that I think probably when it comes to vandalism or behavior of that ilk, the worst incidents that you can have is 2 13-year-olds and I dare you. And that fence stops that. It just keeps them out. It also goes a long way out of sight, out of mind. If they don't know that I dare you isn't going to happen, and if you've got your hives painted something other than neon white, they're probably never going to be noticed. A trick to do here is if you're thinking about it and moving along and not there yet, is to put some empty beehives in your backyard, painted the way you're going to paint them, and just let them sit there and see how long it takes people to notice. A, and B, once they notice, then you can explain, oh, they're just some I'm storing, and don't worry about it because there's not bees in there. And obviously, if there had been bees, they wouldn't have noticed anyway. So a trick that but be a good neighbor when it comes to fences and property lines. And some communities are incredibly specific. Tape measure, you got to be this far from a property line, be this far plus another from the property line, so that you're not pushing that neighbor's problems. And the other thing I'll go back to is water. You notice in this yard there is a place for kids to play, and you may not think this is an issue now, but maybe in 2 years when your kids aren't playing baseball every afternoon or aren't playing football in the fall, that may come into play. And how do you deal with that? And making space for your family and your bees on the same piece of land is always something to keep in mind. And where is that flight path going? And does it go around? Often a flight path is going to go up and around over the fence, and who's behind you? And if there's a swimming pool behind you, maybe you want to think about that. If there is a forest behind you, you've got much less to worry about. But watch where your bees, and the flight path's going to change. And when it changes, in spring they're going that way, and in summer they're going this way, and in the fall they're going up over here. Where is over here, and are they at 4 feet off the ground, or are they at 8 feet off the ground? So keep flight paths in mind. That goes with people staining also, and where they're heading out. All of these pictures were taken in California, and they were taken up in the San Francisco area and Oakland area. And it took me a while to notice this, but you can't see anybody's yard in Oakland. And I don't know what these people are hiding. Maybe bees. I don't know. But you don't know either. And that's the point here, is that when you've got this kind of a fence, nobody knows what's going on in your yard. And if it's legal and you're not even, no, I can't say if it's illegal, but if it's legal, nobody knows you've got bees behind those fences. You don't know what's going on. And that solves 99% of your problems, is nobody sees you, hears you, knows what's going on. So this kind of a fence, these kind of fences work pretty well. Again, the checklist of good neighbors in crowded places, away from property lines, and occupied in the least visible location. Watch for fecal droppings, avoid livestock in full sun. Why full sun? Because of varroa and because of small hive beetle. Now, I have a problem with small hive beetle in the shade where I'm at. We have lots of beekeepers from Florida who come up and steal our honey every summer, and they leave behind lots of small hive beetles when they go back south in the fall. And so we've inherited a good population of small hive beetle in Ohio because of that reason. My bees in the sun, not a problem. The reason it's not a problem is because we have soil in Ohio that's that hard, and beetles trying to pupate go out and bounce off the ground. If they're in the shade, however, the soil's a little damper, a little bit longer, and you end up with softer soil, and we end up with a lot more small hive beetles. So for us, it's a management issue, purely a management issue by keeping them in full sun. Flight paths away from neighbors' gardens, and don't overcrowd. What's overcrowding? There's a city in Connecticut that had a beekeeper who just went nuts. And he's got 17 colonies on a lot not much bigger than this podium. That's nuts. And what happens is he keeps bees in New York City, and he rotates them in and out, and he brings them up just out of the city, and he sets them down. The people living next to him on 3 sites are prisoners in their own home. And they finally got up in arms, and they said, okay, no beekeeping in this city, period, anymore, except for the guy who's grandfathered in. Guess who? So what is too many colonies? And therein lies a good decision. Is it 1 per city lot, 2 per city lot? How big is a city lot? 3 per 5 acre lot if you're on the edge of town? You have to be reasonable, but at the same time you have to be cautious. You have to take it in the back of your mind. And then there's a guy who has 3 colonies most years, and then he splits every colony 4 ways, and for about maybe 3 months he's got 30 colonies on his land. Is that an issue? Well, it can be when you've got that many bees. So at some point, look down the road, think ahead, and how is this going to work for everybody all year long? And what's my neighbor going to think when there were only 3 colonies over there yesterday, and now there's a forest of beehives? So what's going on? And know how to deal with that. More neighbor stuff. Bait hive, and advertise the fact that that's what this is. Tell people what it is. Paint it on the side. Tell people what this is. This is a swarm trap. When my bees swarm, when somebody else's bees swarm, they're going to come to my trap. They're not going to end up in your yard, maybe. But if you advertise the fact, it's a proactive approach to a problem that a lot of people are worried about. And if they know that you are concerned about it and you're trying to protect them, it goes a long way. Even if they get a swarm, it goes a long way in improving their attitude towards you. Hive safely and easily accessible. And here I'm thinking about ones up on the roof, the people that go up on roofs. And a lot of roofs are, you can walk out on them from some hallway inside, and some of them you're going up a ladder. And I don't know if you ever tried to move a deep full of honey. I think the image there just says it all. I'll tell you another one that was the good story on easily accessible. are the people who wanted to put an apiary under, they were renting an apartment and wanted to put an apiary on the roof. The landlord said, fine, follow these guidelines, da-da-da-da-da-da. They said they had to go through a small window to get out there, and that was okay. They took their equipment, they assembled it on the equipment, they assembled it on the roof, and of course when it's assembled, nothing fit through the window again. Now what do? A frame at a time. Where do you take it? Down through the hall. Somebody wasn't thinking ahead when you do this. So if roof beekeeping is in your future, or you have to deal with roof beekeeping and it's part of the plan that you're putting together for urban beekeeping, keep that in mind, is that equipment up and equipment down, safe and accessible. I have in here have an EpiPen always, and there's a mixed feeling on that one. And the reason is because are you a doctor? And you're not. Are there any? Probably not. No doctors in here. And is it safe for you? Is it okay for you that one person in 300 that's going to have an issue and has an issue and tips over in front of you? Do you use an EpiPen? In Ohio we have the law says you are doing something to save their life and it's okay to do that. I'm going to have it. In Wisconsin it was a little bit different. And I had to convince somebody else to do this. So what's the law on you administering a medication, even if that person is dying, right? So beforehand, no going in. That do I have an EpiPen? If I have an EpiPen, can I use it? And I have one, and I would use it in a heartbeat. And I've used it twice in my life. I've had to use it twice, and I'm glad I had it. Had I not, we used it on the way to the emergency room. One person might have made it, the other one sure as heck wouldn't have. So, to me, having one is a no-brainer. Don't locate near concentrations of people. Be aware of commercial restrictions and selling from home. Now, I'll go back to insurance. Are you selling honey from your home or, your business? Primarily your home. If somebody drives up to your house and gets out of their car to go into that little stand that you've got inside your front door, or the one by on the edge of your property, they get out of the car, and you know that hole in the driveway you've been meaning to fix for the last 7 years, and you always avoid because you know it's a hole, and this lady steps out, and her high heels catching that, and she trips over and breaks her ankle. And your insurance company says, you're doing a business here, we don't cover that. You're going to have to cover that yourself. So do you know? And before you make that investment in selling retail from your house, what's your insurance company going to do? What's your liability? What can happen? Because of all of the things that can happen, you have insurance that will cover you no matter what. And that's kind of where that goes. Water's almost always the biggest issue. Almost always, but so often that it really deserves even bigger letters than I have here. And it's water. If you're in a densely urban area, and I'm thinking New York City, it often isn't a problem because bees find water mostly where there's not people, because mostly people and water don't get together in cities. It's more suburbs and less densely populated areas where you have swimming pools, where you have bird baths, where you have irrigation systems. Those sorts of things is where water and bees and people begin to mix it up, and usually the bees don't win. But if you have a strong colony of bees in the summer, when it's 90 degrees out, when I say a strong colony, I'm thinking 2 deeps and probably 2 or 3 honeysuckers. A strong colony in the summer when it's 90 degrees out may go through as much water as a gallon a day. Certainly a half a gallon, without a doubt. Between a half a gallon and a gallon. They're going to get it someplace. They got to cool the hive. Where are they going to get it? Go back to that first slide. The bees are in the pool again. And that's where they're going to get it. Think of bees looking for water. And they're, you're at 60 feet or wherever it is, and you're looking down for a glint of water or smell or whatever it is that they cue in on. What is a swimming pool? A swimming pool is this giant neon sign with this cloud of chlorine coming up that's screaming water here. And that's what they see. Why would they look any further? You just told them that this is the place. It's like an airport coming in, lights and all of that. Your job is to make them not want to go there in the first place and to provide something between you and them that they get the same message from. and that is some kind of container of water. Now, it's a gallon today, and tomorrow it's going to be 90 degrees, it's a gallon tomorrow. And if you've got 2 colonies, there's 2 gallons today and 2 gallons tomorrow. And you can see how much this is going to add up. So providing enough water gets to be an issue. Some people use a slow drip, some people use a leaky hose, whatever it is it takes to work, that you always have water. What I've got shown here is a livestock automatic water. It never goes dry. And that's the kind of water source that you're going to need, because the minute it goes dry, I still need water, and I'm still going to get it someplace, and that swimming pool's screaming water over here to me. So if you let it go dry, you cause your own problem. Never let it go dry. Bees in water, and bees in, when you've got bees in a bath, in a bird bath, and you've got bees bothering people at picnics, wherever it is, you've got bees and people together looking for water. That's where you're going to have somebody going down to City Hall saying, I've had it, this guy's nuts, I want him out of here, I want his bees out of here, where you could have avoided it in the first place. So figure, I'm going to say maximum, figure liberally here, a gallon a hive a day in the summer. And if you've got 3 hives, that's 3 gallons, that's a 5-gallon pail today and tomorrow, and it's gone. So you're out there every other day, or you've got 10, or you've got some other resource to put up so that you've got enough water all of the time for all of the bees that you have here. They're going to find it someplace. If you're starting out, if you're just starting out where you've got a package or you're bringing in a new, the ideal situation is to have your water source there that day, actually the day before, and that you have it marked. You have it, you make your own chlorine pool. Dump in some licorice or dump in some spearmint, something with an odor, so that the minute bees, and then take it a step further if you want, take a half a cup of that and dump it on the landing board. And bees will come out, yes, this is water, it's good, and now I know what water tastes like, and it's right over there. And you set the stage for probably no encounters at all the rest of the summer, as long as it doesn't go dry. Provide water, prevent bees seeking water, keep areas. When I say keep areas clean and free of debris, I don't know any beekeeper that's got a bunch of old equipment laying around. Do you? Well, for us that's home. And for another beekeeper, that may be something free when he comes over and says, you want that? But for the neighbor who's trying to keep, a neighborhood kind of looking good and nice, and there's no bees buzzing around, old equipment, take care of it. Get rid of it. Stash it someplace where you're not going to have bees visiting it. It looks nice. And it just, it's really not, it's a good neighbor thing. And it doesn't affect how you keep bees, and it doesn't affect what bees are going to do to them, but it just keeps life simpler if you don't have a bunch of bees buzzing around your front yard. Work bees at what's the right time of day? Between 10 and 2, just like swimming. And the reason is because hardly anybody's home in the hive, and there are fewer bees at home, the fewer bees there are to bother you when you're in the hive. It makes sense, it's good common sense, but it's just one of the things to keep in mind. Know your liabilities and have insurance. One more time, insurance. Prevent swarming. Answer swarm calls. If you belong to a local association in the town, the cities that are doing this the best. I use Washington, D.C. because I know Tony Burnham really well, and she's the guru of urban beekeeping in Washington, D.C. They have an army of people. If a swarm call comes into there, it doesn't stop until somebody says yes, and there's a phone, they got a phone thing that works. And it's texting, and it's social media, and it's whatever, and it never gets, from what she tells me, it never gets past the third person. That swarm gets picked up. And without it, they've got they know they're going to have a problem, so that swarm gets picked up. So if you're in the city and you are dealing with shaky ground, this is the sort of institution you want in place. You want a swarm call comes to, and within 3 phone calls, that swarm call is answered and those bees get picked up. Where do they go? Well, if it's a beekeeper and you've got a place to put them, that's one good thing. If it's a beekeeper and you don't have a place to put them, I got 3 hives on the roof, I got no more room for bees, where am I going to put them? A lot of cities, and I'm talking Pittsburgh and Washington, D.C., and Brooklyn and Cleveland and Minneapolis and Denver and Milwaukee that I know of, the groups in these cities have a club bee yard, and that's where they can go. And it's a place that the city and the group the city and the group have set aside that says you can have bees here. These bees come in, they're a hive. They may go out again right away when somebody's looking for a hive and wants to buy one, or they can give them away. But you've got a place to put them, because one of the biggest issues of not answering a swarm call is I got no place to put it. I can't do anything with it. Why do I want more bees? And if you know you've got a place, that takes that pressure off of you. Yep, I can go get those bees, and I can put them out in our bee yard, and we're covered. So if you're looking for a way to solve that problem, is what do I do with these bees once I've got them? Then you start looking for that alternate bee yard. I'm trying to think of the Omaha has done a really good job with this. The city group there. And they use it as a teaching yard, and they use it as essentially a storage yard, but they also sell them off. When new beekeepers come in, I've got a beehive, I know that it's disease-free, here you are, so much, almost for free. And so they're cycling bees in and out of there a lot, but they've got people, and the swarm call always gets answered. Once you get this, it's amazing what the police begin to think. They just write it off their list of problems. Swarms, call the guys, and it's off their, they don't have to think about it. That makes those people really happy. They don't have to block city streets, they don't have to worry about endangering citizens. So deal with swarms on a as fast as you can basis. But you can say all these things that you want, there's still going to be that little old lady somewhere who is not going to let go. And I know a guy named Guido that you could hire probably, but to take care of her. But there's a small contingent of people that are just never going to let go of this. They're just not going to. They are going to continue to not let you have bees, and that may be the way it has to be. It may be, eventually she's not going to be here. She'll move. She may change her mind. Constant pressure, whatever. But at some point in time, you're going to have to lose this argument, because she's not going to let go of it. She has just an innate, insane fear of insects and of bees, and you got to let it go. I don't know the answer to this, and maybe if the answer is you find a bee yard outside of town, and that's usually the only way you can go until she changes her mind, moves on, and you can get the law changed. But bees are scary. Some of these you're going to lose. And if you know that going in, and you take a look at this, you got the immovable object and irresistible force. Maybe the force isn't worth the effort, because you're going to alienate a whole lot of people. And once you piss off a whole lot of people, or even a smaller group of people in town, the chance of getting the law changed down the road becomes even harder. So take a look at what's this fight worth when I can drive 4 miles and put a bee yard out there. Bad stuff happens with bees in the city and bees anywhere. Vibrations. Ever mow a lawn right next to a beehive on the wrong day? Okay, that's your bad day, but it's also the bad day for the people next door. So they're going to have a bad day. And suddenly it's your problem. You were dumb, but now they're suffering because you were dumb, and the bees are just doing what bees are going to do. So you not paying attention to what's going on have caused a problem. Swarms we've talked about. Take a look at that wheelbarrow. Can you imagine that guy turning that thing over? And then running. Africanized bees are an issue, and they are, the term Africanized bees has scared the heck out of everybody. Every time somebody has a bad day with Africanized bees in any part of this country, it makes the newspapers. Not the front screaming headlines anymore, maybe down below the fold, but the guy in Texas who was moving construction equipment tipped over a nest and couldn't get out of the way fast enough, it makes the paper. That's what keeps it on the back of people's mind. Are you going to bring Africanized bees here? Do we have them? Is it going to be a problem? You have to convince them that this isn't going to be a problem and that you're taking care of business. Truck turns over. You have trucks turning over with bees way more in this part of the world than I do. But in an urban situation, probably not going to happen a lot. You don't have a lot of bees going through Fifth Avenue in New York City. But we do, in my part of Ohio, we have trucks going across 80, which is about 10 miles north of me and about 10 miles south of Cleveland. What happens when a truck goes over that exit, cuts it too tight and rolls it? And do we have, none of us are urban. Medina, I'm 10 miles away, but the cops are going to start calling beekeepers. What do we do? And if you are mildly urban or suburban, do you have a plan in place? Where can you get a forklift at 2 in the morning? And that's the kind of question you need to have asked to be able to tell the cops, this is what you need. You got to pick this stuff up. You got to put a spray of water. Do you have the spray hose? Can you put a spray of water on them to keep them from moving until you can get that forklift at 8 in the morning to get them out of here? So an action plan, not only with you and probably several local beekeeping clubs, so that the local police have a lot of people to call, but also the local police and the local fire departments and emergency responders. All of those people need to be on the same page when that truck flips over and starts blocking traffic. If you don't have one in place, you want to seriously think about it, at least a rudiment plan. And if you do, then is it working? And does it work? And is everybody on the same page? So truck accidents, rare, but every time a truck turns over in Utah or California or Texas, I read about it in Cleveland. So it's not going to go away, and it's big enough to read about it in Cleveland. And of course, there's things like yellow jackets that you have zero control over. I mean, in my part of Ohio this year, we didn't have a frost until really late, and as a result, the yellow jacket populations just exploded, and they were everywhere. And I got between 10 and 12 calls a day from people in Medina to get my damn bees out of his yard. Well, they're not my bees, and you spend 20 minutes explaining the situation to people, and that's what you have to do. But it's a situation you can't control. What about robbing? You know what robbing, the worst thing about robbing, the classic example when I was living in Madison was a guy ran about 60 colonies, and he had his honey house in his garage in town. And he would go out to his out yards and he'd harvest his supers, and he'd bring them home, unload them, put them in his honey house and extract at night and take them out the next morning. Until one day something went wrong. He brought his truck home, he parked it in his driveway, and he didn't move them into his honey house. Okay, you know the story. Suddenly there's this cloud of bees over his whole entire property. You know, he attracted every bee in Dane County. And suddenly people are going, this is nuts, we can't have this. On a smaller scale, there are 2 colony hobbyists and working in his backyard, takes a honey super off and sets it down, and there's a dearth on, he doesn't know it. And the bees from the other 2 colonies that he's got find it, and they start the robbing. Is that even a super here, or when they're robbing out a colony that's just sitting there, you get a lot of bee stinging bees in defense of the colony, and you get a lot of bee venom wafting off into the air. It's not locked on your skin like it is when you get stung. It's just wafting into the air. And the breeze picks it up and it blows it off to your neighbors or across the street. And suddenly you've got a lot of bees who are being excited by bee venom a block away. And then that's when the problem of robbing gets serious, because you've got people being stung by bees that aren't yours because of bees that are yours doing something in your backyard. And then you've got a real problem. And this could be a real problem. How do you solve a robbing situation right now? And know that answer. And know when you're teaching a beginners class, if you are, know that answer. Tell that person, how do you stop this now? Teach them to recognize it so it doesn't, recognize how not to let it begin, recognize it when it's going on, and how to stop it. What's the best way in that situation with that super? A black plastic bag. Right now. And you stop, no more bees can get in and out. The bees that are out will go home and they won't come back, and the bees that are inside can't get anywhere. And you pretty much solve the situation. Close up all the colonies in the yard, it settles down real fast. But don't let it start, and if it starts, know how to stop it. Because it can cause serious problems blocks away. And it's your fault, but it's not really bees that are yours causing the problem. This is what I have. When you've got a deadly situation, I mentioned Africanized bees, and I learned this trick from the inspection people in Florida who have active Africanized issues going on in their part of the world. And if I've got a situation that isn't critical, I've always got a container of soap, and I keep a pail of water in my bee yard, and I've always got a container of soap in my bucket for my smoker fuel, and I can make up a bucket of soapy water really fast. Not fast enough if somebody's in danger. And if you've got a colony that is going full-blown and there are people's lives, or you perceive that there are people's lives at stake, the best thing you can do, and I've got 2 of them in my bee yard, is the large black yard waste plastic bags. I put it over the colony, I tip it over, I tie it shut, problem solved. That fast. You're going to save somebody's life. If you've got it there and you never need it, fantastic. But if you've got it there and you do need it, and you end up saving somebody's life, or maybe not even saving somebody's life, but saving a grotesque situation that will make the national news, and I will read about it in Cleveland, you don't want to have that happen, and that's how to stop it. 2 ways to stop it in a hurry. A bucket of soapy water, or a black plastic bag on a hot, sunny day, and you'll stop it right now. And that will make you a hero, A, but also it'll let you keep bees tomorrow. They won't make you get them out of there tonight when it's done. Because you prevented that accident. Sometimes you have a situation where in an urban situation, you absolutely, a new neighbor comes in, or a building goes up, or a road comes through, and your bee yard is history, and you've got to move it right now. They call you at work, and you've got to come home and get those bees out of here right now. Where does it go? And you've got to have an action plan. That community bee yard that I mentioned is a good action plan. If you've got one of those, you're covered. But if you don't, where does it go? And that's step B. You're going to know, all right, I get a call at work at 10 o'clock tomorrow morning. I got to have them out of there by lunch because the bulldozers are coming through. Where am I going to put them? And you've got a friend with a bee yard. You've got a community bee yard. You've got an out yard someplace. But you have it in the back of your head. Where am I going to go? Instead of, oh, crap, where am I going to go? And you don't know. And that causes the problem. So how are you going to get them there? My Volvo just doesn't take a beehive. And that's an issue. Maybe it does. I have a picture of a good friend of mine has a convertible, and he's driving and the beehive is sticking out of the back seat. It's a good picture. Especially when you know it's a Mercedes. But how are you going to get them there? Okay, I got a place to put them, but my Volvo doesn't take bees. How am I going to get them to that bee yard? And that's part of your plan B. You know, the guy with the truck, you have a second car, whatever it is. But plan B is yes, I got to move them, and this is how I'm going to do it, and I can do it on a 10-minute notice. Because that's what those people, that construction guy is getting paid by the hour, and he's doing, get them out of here, and you've got to move. So if you've got to move them, have a place to go. What equipment do you need? And that's pretty predictable. All the kinds of hives today that people are using, some of them don't look like beehives, and that goes a long way of not telling people you're a beekeeper. The one down in the bottom there, the green one, it's called an omelet hive. It's from England, and it's all plastic, and it looks like a beer cooler. I don't use it anymore, and it makes a really good beer cooler, by the way. But it doesn't look like a beehive. I mean, I could have that up. My neighbors never knew there were bees in it. They didn't know what it was, but they didn't know it was a beehive. Yeah. See? They didn't know. So what equipment do you use if you're going to have bees in the town? And the classic standard white boxes is probably the last on your list. You're going to be painting them different colors, and you're going to be putting them, camouflaging them, and having them behind screens and fences and all sorts of things. So where you put it and what equipment you use could go a long way in just reducing any tensions that your neighbors may have, because they just don't really realize that those are beehives, and that's what's going on. Until some Sunday afternoon, you're walking from your house to the back of your yard in this big white suit, and you've got a smoker, and visions of science fiction, something come through your neighbor's vision, and suddenly you've got an issue. So do you need a smoker? Well, my first answer is, well, of course. Well, that's not the only answer, and the only other answers are, maybe not the big white suit, maybe something pastel and something a little shorter, and a squirt bottle with some essential oils in it. not as good as smoke, and maybe most days you can use smoke because your neighbors aren't home, or you've got other resources. But if you've got to be there, you know, that squirt bottle can go a long ways to not scaring the heck out of your neighbors. So maybe you don't need smoke. What kind of bees? Gentle. That's it. Gentle. I don't care what color they are. I don't care what they look like. I don't care. Gentle. And by gentle, if I kick a hive, one of my hives, and I get stung, that queen is gone. I gotta know that I can kick this hive any time of day, any time of year, and I'm not gonna get stung. Because if I do, those bees are gentle enough for my situation where I'm at. Now, your situation could be a whole lot different, and you can tolerate a lot more activity. But I gotta know that when that 7-year-old kid next door comes over because his ball ran over onto my property and hit my beehive, and he's going to go over there and pick it up, he's not going to get stung. I got to know that. I got to be dead certain that that's the way it's going to be. I have gentle bees. There's no two ways about it. You may be able to get away with other kinds, but I got to know that that kid isn't going to get stung, ever, because of my bees. Know the biology, and this goes without saying, and I'll only say a little bit about it, but the better beekeeper you are, the better able you are to manage your bees, the better able you are to control populations. All of the things that go along with being a good beekeeper, if you're in an urban situation, are kind of intensified. You need to be aware of when to super and when they're going to swarm and all of these things. So I'll go back to, did you take the beginner's course? And if you took the beginner's course, then take it again. It's amazing how much you learn the second time you take the course. And the better you are, the more you know about biology, the better you're able you'll be, and then watch the Weather Channel. How many people here really watch the Weather Channel? Yeah. I got it on my smartphone, and everybody watches the Weather Channel because you got to know what's going on. I see somebody shaking their head out there. Doesn't matter.
Playing every day here. Sunny, warm, right?
That's liquid sunshine.
Well, I'll poop on you. That's all I can say. I don't have that problem. I gotta watch the Weather Channel. I gotta know if it's gonna work. What's it gonna be doing at 5 o'clock when I get home from work? Because that's when I can work bees. And if it's gonna be raining, I may come home at lunch and do what I need to do. So know what the weather's gonna be if you're working in town. Because if it's not nice, you're gonna create a problem. Extreme urban beekeeping up on the roof. We talked about some of the things that can go on. Abandoned lots, urbanized lots. There's lots of places in the city that you can put bees that work. And if it's legal and you've already got an association in place, you're going to get a lot of answers. If it's not legal, then you shouldn't be doing it in the first place. But I've never seen that happen. So if you're looking for, and right in the middle there it says out of sight, out of mind, that goes a long way of solving a lot of problems. If people don't know there's bees there, if they don't think about bees and they don't know there's bees there, 99 out of 100 people will never have an issue with bees. It's that one that you have to deal with. If you're up at the roof, I've seen some people do some insane things, and I'm never ever going to put bees up there. But if you're putting them up on the roof, what are you putting them on? What's the substrate on, the flooring that you're putting them on? Is it going to get 140 on the day when it gets to be 100, air temperature is 100 because of the color of the roof, or do you have a wind block? How high can you put them and the wind doesn't? I think it's 10 stories that the people in New York City are reaching. Once much above that, the bees go out and they never come back. And it's because of the wind. And it depends on the wind. The tall skyscrapers in New York City prevent currents that may be different than shorter buildings in another kind of city. But how do you know until you try? So don't fall off the roof. I say that carefully because I know people who have. They're backing up, and oh, darn, and they're a story down. And so be careful on the roof. And if you're up there, know the hazards of getting your stuff up and then getting your stuff full of honey and bees back down. Nutrition in the city is usually a lot better than it is in the country, only because there's people who are watering plants all year long, and you end up with actually often very much better forage for bees than you do in the country. The countries tend to be like this, the city tends to be more like this. Medina's city tree is the linden, and we make some of the nicest linden honey that you can imagine in the spring. But then it tapers down a little bit, but we keep going all summer long in the city. So wherever you are, what's blooming? Washington, D.C. probably is the best forage I have ever seen. They start in February and they don't quit until February. It's incredible. But it's because of all the city parks and the decorations that they do. There's always something blooming that bees like. So if you're in the city, what are your bees going to be eating? And if they run out, do you know, A, and B, do you know what to feed them to get them through? And as a good beekeeper, you're going to be aware of that. Of course, honey and pollen are the best, but there's other things that people are feeding. Work your bee yard at the right time of day. Know what you're doing when you're out there. And don't create a lot of problems. Be a good beekeeper. Can I say that again? Be a good beekeeper, because if you're a good beekeeper, you're doing all of those things. Anyway, we've already talked about robbing and what it can do in a neighborhood. You are your beekeeper's beekeeper, and in a crowded situation, crowded with beekeepers, you're on top of each other, and if you've got a problem, your neighbor's going to have it, and vice versa. So if your neighbor isn't treating for anything or isn't taking care of his bees, you're going to inherit his problems. Know what to do about them, A, and B, hopefully maybe you can encourage that person to actually begin to be a better beekeeper. Varroa, you just heard Randy talk about all of the things about Varroa. And all of the other diseases that bees get, you just have to take care of them. That goes with being a good beekeeper. Queen issues. This is more management than it is urban, but it deserves attention in that a lot of cities require you to mark your queens. And if you don't have a marked queen and something happens, then they can point at you and say, what kind of a manager are you? Now, you and I know how realistic that is, really. But if it's the law, and you're going to have to pay attention to it somehow. So at least be aware of it, that you have to do it. Removing bees, boy, has this blossomed. And there's a lot of people out there that are making a living. They've quit their day job and they're removing bees and they're making good money. And milk it for what it's worth. But a lot of people don't want to kill them anymore. No more exterminators. I want them out there. I want to save them. I want to do my part to save the bees. Yes, ma'am. That'll be $500. And that's what happens. Is that you are able to. There's a lot of people I've seen, especially south of the Mason-Dixon line, but even up in Cleveland, a couple of people have managed to quit their day jobs and they're removing bees. Not only yellow jackets, but honeybees, but almost any stinging insect. It may be a new career here for you. If you're a good carpenter and a good beekeeper, it may be somewhere you can go. And I'm out of time, so the bees are in the pool again. Thank you.